When the gunshot rang out, everyone started running in panic. But the mall security guard did the exact opposite. He ran straight toward the VIP and shouted, "Get down! Active shooter in the building." That moment, everyone's life at the mall changed forever. Walter placed the model on the table with trembling fingers. This was the final piece of his 25-year hobby. Museum director Dr. Patricia Johnson examined the model and saw the inscription, "Korean War, Merchant Marine, Never Forgotten." She looked up at Walter. "Is this a personal memory?" Walter was 68 years old, a modest man. His family knew he had served in the Merchant Marine, but he always downplayed it. "We just carried cargo," he would say. "It wasn't real war." This model was different. Every detail came from lived experience. No one knew what he had experienced in 1952 while carrying supplies to Busan. Hello and welcome to The Last Stand. Do you have a sailor or Merchant Marine veteran in your family? Do you know about their maritime experiences? Share in the comments. Walter Johnson was 68 years old, a quiet retiree living in Millfield. For 25 years, his only hobby had been building ship models. His garage contained dozens of Liberty ships, Victory ships, and cargo vessel models. That Tuesday morning, he had decided to donate his final model to the Millfield Maritime Museum. His hands were now so shaky he couldn't manage the fine details anymore. The model was a large Liberty ship named SS Robert E. Lee. The museum was small, but did serious work on maritime history. Museum director Dr. Patricia Johnson met Walter at the door. "Mr. Johnson, you brought the model?" "Yes," Walter said quietly. "I can't make them anymore. I'd like to donate it to you." Dr. Johnson placed the model on the table and began examining it carefully. The level of detail was incredible. Every rivet, every cable, every deck detail was perfect. It looked like someone who had actually worked on real ships had made it. "This is incredible, Doctor," Johnson said. "How do you know this much detail?" Walter shrugged. "Books, photographs." But Dr. Johnson noticed something different. Under the model was a small plaque, "Korean War Merchant Marine, Never Forgotten." "Is this a personal memory?" she asked. Walter hesitated for a moment. For over 50 years, very few people had asked him about this topic. His family knew he had been in the Merchant Marine, but he had always minimized it. "We just carried cargo," he would say. "It wasn't real war." "Yes," he finally said. "I served from 1952 to 1953. "Would you tell me about it?" Dr. Johnson said. Walter sat down in a chair. He hadn't told this story in a long time. "I was 18 years old," he began. "Early 1952. The Korean War was ongoing. I needed to do military service, but my father was sick and I had to work on the farm." "How did you get into the Merchant Marine?" "A recruiter came to town. He said, 'Essential service. You'll carry supplies to the soldiers.' The pay was good. I could help my family." Walter looked out the window. It seemed simple. Load supplies on the ship, carry them to Korea, come back. I thought there was no risk. Dr. Johnson was taking notes. Merchant Marine stories were rare. Most people didn't even know about this service. "My first ship was SS Meredith Victory," Walter said. "Liberty ship, built in 1943. It was an old ship but strong." "What kind of supplies did you carry?" "Everything. Ammunition, food, medical supplies, fuel. Everything the soldiers needed." Walter's voice began to tremble slightly. "On my first trip, nothing happened. We went from San Francisco to Busan, unloaded the cargo, came back. It was easy." "Then what happened?" "The second trip was different. Winter had come. The winter of 1952 was very cold. Chinese forces were making strong attacks. More supplies were needed." Walter paused. This part was always hard to tell. "On the second trip, I was on SS Robert E. Lee, the model I just made." "December 1952, Walter said. "I was assistant cargo master on Robert E. Lee. I knew the ship by then, every corner, every sound." "What was different about that trip?" "Weather conditions were terrible. There was a storm in the Pacific. Waves were 30 feet high. The ship was constantly rocking." Walter clasped his hands together. But the worst part wasn't the cargo. We were carrying people. Dr. Johnson was surprised. People? Wounded soldiers. We were bringing them back from Korea. More than 200 wounded soldiers. There was no hospital ship available, so we carried them. Walter's voice lowered. Most were young kids, 18, 19 years old. Some were badly wounded. How did you take care of them, Doctor? Johnson asked. As best we could. We had 2 medics on the ship, but it wasn't enough. We also helped. We gave them water, talked to them, tried to give them morale. Walter wiped his eyes. They were my age. They had come from war. I was just carrying cargo. I felt powerless. What more could you have done? I don't know. But looking at them, they seemed so young. They were calling for their mothers. They wanted to go home. Walter stopped. Some were in very bad condition. Amputations, burns. They would be disabled for life. Dr. Johnson now understood why he had made such detailed models. Every detail represented a memory. The hardest night was 2 days before Christmas, Walter said. The storm was at its peak. The generator on the ship broke down. What did that mean? No electricity, no heating, and worst of all, the medical equipment needed for the wounded soldiers wouldn't work. Walter placed his trembling hands on the table. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the wounded soldiers. I tried to hold some of them by hand. It was so cold. How did you solve the problem? The chief engineer and I tried to repair the generator. I knew a little about electrical things. I had learned on the farm. Walter was shaking his head. It took 8 hours. The wounded soldiers were freezing. Some were delirious. But we didn't give up. Were you able to repair the generator? Yes. We got it running at 6 a.m. The electricity came back. Heating started. Medical equipment worked again. A sad smile appeared on Walter's face. The wounded soldiers were so happy. Some cried. Did they all survive? Walter was silent for a long time. Most did. But we lost 3 young soldiers that night, while the generator was broken. Doctor. Johnson touched Walter's shoulder. I'm so sorry. Tommy Peterson, from Minnesota. He was 19 years old. Michael Torres, from Texas. He was 18 years old. Danny Murphy, from Boston. He was 20 years old. Walter's voice was shaking. I never forgot their names. What happened when you returned? When we arrived in San Francisco, families were waiting. They took the wounded soldiers to hospitals. We went home too. Walter looked out the window. I went back to the farm. My father asked how it went. I said, fine. We just carried cargo. Why didn't you tell the details? What would I tell? How Tommy died? How the wounded soldiers suffered? My family was dealing with farm work. These stories would have upset them. Doctor. Johnson understood. How did you feel? Guilty. They fought. I just carried. We weren't real heroes. So, how did you start making these models? Walter smiled. After I retired in 1998, I found an old shipbook in the garage. I saw a photograph of Robert E. Lee. How did you feel? Strange. Seeing that ship after 45 years brought everything back. Tommy's voice, Michael's laugh, Danny's Boston accent. Walter pointed to the model. I made the first model in their memory. Then I made more. What did your family say? My wife Margaret was supportive. She said, nice hobby. The children liked it too. But none of them knew the real meaning of these models. Doctor. Johnson nodded. This is a very important story. This story should be shared, Dr. Johnson said. Merchant Marine Service isn't well known enough. Walter nodded. Maybe you're right, but I'm not a hero. The real heroes were Tommy, Michael, and Danny. You also served them. You had risks too. Very little. They fought. I was safe on the ship. Doctor. Johnson pulled something out of her file. Mr. Johnson, I researched Merchant Marine records. Your name is here. Walter was surprised. What records? Korean War Merchant Marine Service records. Your name is in the official records. And there's something else. Doctor. Johnson showed Walter the paper. This is your service record. You served on SS Meredith Victory and SS Robert E. Lee. Walter put on his glasses and read. Yes, this is correct. But look at this. Doctor. Johnson pulled out another paper. Humanitarian Service Recognition for Generator Repair. Walter's mouth fell open. What is this? It's in the official records. Electrical Emergency Repair contributed to saving multiple lives. December 1952. Walter looked at the paper silently. I didn't know this was recorded. Not only that, there's also a letter of appreciation from the Coast Guard and letters from the families of 3 soldiers. Walter's eyes filled. What letters, Doctor? Johnson pulled out envelopes. These letters were written in 1953. From Tommy Peterson's mother, Michael Torres's father, Danny Murphy's brother. Walter opened the first letter with trembling hands. From Tommy's mother. Dear Walter Johnson, Tommy talked about you in his last days. He told us how you helped him, how you gave him hope. As his family, we are grateful to you. The second letter from Michael's father. Walter, my son Michael praised you in the letter he wrote. We know that other soldiers were saved thanks to the generator repair. You provided important service. Walter's eyes filled with tears. I never saw these letters. They were preserved in Merchant Marine records. They were never delivered to your family. For 50 years I thought wrong, Walter said with a tremor in his voice. I thought I couldn't save them. You saved many people. It says in the records, 197 wounded soldiers successfully transported. Walter looked up. 197? Yes. There were 3 losses, but that was from illness, not from your failure. You saved 197 lives by solving the electrical emergency. Walter looked at his model. I just did my duty. No, your duty was to carry cargo. Electrical repair wasn't in your job description. You did that voluntarily. Doctor. Johnson stood up. This story should be told. The community needs to know about this important service. What are you thinking of doing? Walter asked. Special exhibit on Veterans Day. Your models, your service records, letters from families. Let's honor Merchant Marine service. Walter thought. But I just provided important service. Yes, you did. You've been modest for 50 years, but the facts are clear. Doctor. Johnson explained her plan. Permanent exhibit at Maritime Museum. Korean War Merchant Marine Service. Your models will be the centerpiece. Walter wiped his face. Will Tommy, Michael, and Danny's stories be told too? Of course. Their photographs, stories, letters. All of them. Walter nodded. Okay, let's do it. In the following weeks, the museum and Walter worked together. Walter brought all his models. His 25-year collection was impressive. Dr. Johnson did historical research. She collected Korean War Merchant Marine Service records, photographs, documents. Walter told his story in detail. Every ship, every trip, every wounded soldier. Recorded interviews were made. Local newspapers heard the news. An article titled Local Veterans 50-Year Quiet Service Revealed was published. Veteran organizations also showed interest. American Legion, VFW, Korean War Veterans Association. They all planned to come to the exhibit. Walter was excited but nervous. I didn't expect this much interest. On Veterans Day morning, the museum was packed. 300 people came. Veterans, their families, community members. Walter sat in the front row. He looked nervous but proud. Dr. Johnson gave the opening speech. Walter Johnson said for 50 years we just carried cargo. But the reality is very different. The exhibit opened. Models were displayed in showcases. Walter's story was told on panels. The most impressive section was Tommy, Michael, and Danny's memorial. Their photographs, letters from families, their stories. Visitors were crying, congratulating Walter. There were special guests at the ceremony. Korean War Veterans Association President, Coast Guard Commander, Merchant Marine Representative. The Korean War Veterans President came on stage. Walter Johnson is one of the unsung service members of the Korean War. Merchant Marine service was vitally important. The Coast Guard Commander read an official citation. For humanitarian service, electrical emergency repair, contributing to saving 197 lives. Walter was called to the stage. He received a standing ovation. With tears in his eyes, he approached the microphone. I just did my duty, he said. The real heroes are Tommy Peterson, Michael Torres, and Danny Murphy. I will never forget them. The hall gave another standing ovation. After the exhibit, Walter's life changed. He started going to schools, telling students about merchant marine service. The Korean War wasn't won just by soldiers, he would say. Merchant marine, nurses, civilians, we all won together. His models remained in the permanent exhibit. Thousands of visitors saw the stories. Walter started new projects: Veteran Oral History Project, Merchant Marine Scholarship Fund. The Coast Guard invited Walter to an honorary ceremony. After 50 years, he received official recognition. Margaret was very proud. "I always knew you provided important service," she said. If you enjoyed these powerful stories, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We share new hero stories every day. Walter Johnson is now 69 years old and still volunteers at the Maritime Museum. He no longer makes models but continues telling stories. Those models are still displayed at the museum. And every visitor reads Walter's modest words, "I just did my duty." But now everyone knows that sometimes duty cannot be distinguished from important service.